If we were to allow the peace process to be derailed, we'd be giving in to violence, in this case a grisly, gruesome murder, perhaps deliberately calculated to throw a spanner in the works and make the political process difficult. We're not going to allow that to happen. The two Prime Ministers will announce a plan tomorrow to take Northern Ireland forward, to restore the Assembly and devolved government, and we will meanwhile actively support the Irish police in their efforts to investigate this barbaric murder and to track down who's responsible and bring them to justice, whoever they are.
I mean, I hope this doesn't sound cynical, but you're talking about power sharing between sort of parties that at the moment are really sort of slinging allegations as to who might be behind and who might be responsible for this killing.
Well, all the parties, whether it's the Democratic Unionists of Ian Paisley or Sinn Féin of Gerry Adams, are agreed that there's only one way forward for Northern Ireland, and that is to join together and share the future and govern together and make sure that decisions are taken in Northern Ireland by elected politicians, not by secretaries of state like me, but actually local people, locally accountable. That's a common vision, and we need now to build a bridge between where we are and to where we need to be, which is an assembly up and running with a restored government, and that is the plan that the two Prime Ministers, Tony Blair and the Taoiseach, will be announcing tomorrow.
But we've already heard denials from the IRA, from Sinn Féin, and finger-pointing really going on from the Ulster Unionists, from the DUP. Isn't that going to make it very difficult if that is the undercurrent, while, as you say, you're trying to restore Parliament and government in Northern Ireland?
Well, verbal fisticuffs between the different parties in Northern Ireland are nothing new. They come and go. What is important is that everybody, as they have done, from Gerry Adams, the leader of Sinn Féin, right the way through to Ian Paisley, condemn this gruesome murder and unite in saying we will not be deflected by such barbarity. We will move Northern Ireland forward, committed to democracy, committed to peace, and that is where the Prime Ministers are going. And to do otherwise, and for anybody to use this horrific event as an excuse to be deflected from that process, would be to give in to murder and to violence, and no democratically elected politician will do that. Certainly the Prime Minister Tony Blair and our government, in tandem with the Irish government, will not be deflected. We will move on, because Northern Ireland needs to move on from this dark and hideous past that we saw a throwback to yesterday in this gruesome murder.
To some extent, I suppose Denis Donaldson will be seen as a symbol, if you like. You know, he came out, he was exposed as a spy, and even though there were assurances made that he would be safe, obviously not. Doesn't that say something about what happens politically in Northern Ireland, that it's difficult to move on because trust, there just doesn't seem to be that element of trust there?
Well, trust is always a difficult problem in Northern Ireland, always a challenge for the governments and the politicians. But let's look where Northern Ireland is today. Leave aside this awful throwback yesterday in this gruesome murder. Leave that aside and just look at where we are. There's now more peace and stability and prosperity in Northern Ireland than ever in its history. There are more jobs than ever in its history. Life is increasingly normalising. Policing is now establishing itself right across Northern Ireland. There are very few, if any, no-go areas. That's all part of Northern Ireland moving forward. There are more visitors to Northern Ireland, 2 million last year, than there are people living there. So we will not be deflected by this event. It may have been deliberately timed and deliberately calculated to try and throw the political process off course. We won't allow that to happen.